What's up? What's happening? I go by the name of Reggie Daes, and this is yet another episode of 1v1. We decided to bring London back for this secondary conversation. I wanted to split this one from the first because it's a whole different topic, whole different feel to this, and I kind of wanted to highlight this as a narrative of its own. Now, if you had to describe divesting, what would, if somebody who's never heard of it before, don't know what it is that you're talking about, no context clues, they're like, yo, what is divesting?
Okay, so divesting, at least for me, when I had first heard of it, right, I thought it was just Black women going outside of their race to white men, dating white men and not dating Black men. However, as I've been on Clubhouse and been in these many conversations, I have learned that divesting is not necessarily just going to someone outside of your race, not necessarily going to the white man. It is just basically making a decision within yourself as a woman to level up. Okay, when it comes to your partner. So that's what divesting is. So it could be someone of your same ethnicity, it could be someone different. It doesn't really matter as long as the situation with that particular person that you're divesting to, I guess, is better than your last situation, if that makes sense.
Okay. I have a few questions about that definition. Now, you said level up, right? And you were saying that it doesn't necessarily mean that it's somebody who's not of your ethnicity. That part seems a little bit contradictory to the narratives that I've seen as far as like reading up on divesting, right? Mm-hmm. When I see people speak about divesting, the whole concept that is usually pushed is the idea of the Black woman no longer seeking Black men and dating outside. That's like the first thing that you see. And it's not like, these aren't counter arguments. These are the arguments made by the women who are, you know, with the hashtag in the bio and the, you know, the rah-rah flag right there for divesting. Two separate questions. I guess the first question, what makes you use the phrase as leveling up? Like what exactly makes you use that phrase when you talk about this type of decision?
So I use the phrase level up because it's one of my favorite phrases, actually, from Shira7, who is one of my favorite YouTube bloggers who talks about this a lot. But leveling up, in my opinion, it just means, you know, taking accountability for yourself, right? And seeing what you really want, recognizing, acknowledging who you are as a person and going after that. And if that means that you need to go date somebody else who's not necessarily the same color as you, or, you know, the same ethnicity or same background as you, then so be it. That's what I feel like leveling up is I think people make it more out to what it really is. It's really very simple. It's just taking accountability, doing the inner work on yourself. And I know all these things sound so cliche, but just knowing what you want and dating with, you know, intention with somebody who's actually going to reciprocate that in return, right? So a lot of women, especially Black women who divest, you know, they are in situations where they are being either mentally, physically, spiritually abused, right? In some form or fashion, whether, you know, they had a role in it or not, it's not healthy for them. So in order to, you know, get out of that situation, they have to remove themselves, right? And go on to something, quote unquote, that is more healthy for them in a spiritual and a mental mindset first. And then everything else, you know, will definitely follow. So again, with the, you know, the Black women going to white men, again, that's what I thought divesting was too. And I like to use the analogy of, like, for example, the PPP loan that's going on right now. Yeah. Most people flock to the PPP loan because if you use 75% of it for payroll, okay, it is going to get forgiven, that 75%. But people don't know also that it can be used for other things for your business. But that's the only thing that's highlighted in the media and society, is because that is one of the main key points or benefits rather of doing that particular program, but it's other benefits as well. So that's how I look at divesting. I know that's a random analogy, but the Black woman going to the white man, yes, that is a hot topic, right? That's one of the key points, because, you know, a lot of Black people feel like, you know, we need to stay within our race, we need to stay exclusive and things of that nature. But that's not just what it is. And I need people to get off of that focus and really see the whole thing as a big picture, right?
I'm one of those people who believe. I personally believe love is love. At the end of the day, you can't really, you can't really make a solid base decision as far as like who to spend the rest of your life with off of factors that are non-character based. And that's just how I believe. Like I don't look at when people ask me, okay, what is your ideal woman? Now, I have an affinity towards Black women. I personally believe that my child will look like me, that my my family will look like the family that I grew up with. But that's due to a lot of reasons of just me feeling comfort in that area. Now, I
And
do
how you were
understand
brought
that
up,
some
right?
people, yeah. Well, my mom never really. I don't think my mom ever really imparted that on me. It's just more so what I've seen growing up. I've
Oh,
always seen that, and I've always wanted to be that. Now, I know with me, I had a lot of terrible examples as far as what a man is and what a family is growing up. I grew up with all the wrong examples as far as like things that I saw, things that I witnessed, things that I dealt with. So for me, I know from an early age, I made a personal decision that those were things that I was not going to become. Those were people that I was not going to emulate. And those were things that I was going to fight my damnedest to make sure that I could be the exact opposite of, which I was able to succeed in doing. And I think the final step in that for me is becoming that Black father that I had always wanted to have in the home growing up. I thought that, to me, that's the story. Like that's the story I painted in myself since I was a child. Because I
mhm.
looked at myself, I was raised off of stoicism. Like I read, the Iliad, the Odyssey, things of that nature. And to me, a man's journey is based off of his beginning. And I looked at my beginning as a beginning of all the examples of the pitfalls that I would want to avoid, right?
Right.
So I use that as a weapon to kind of guard myself from making certain decisions. That's why I'm 29 now. I don't have any illegitimate children. I don't have a whole bunch of women, trying to throw rocks through my window and shit like that. I don't live that kind of life.
High value.
Yeah, right. And consistently, I feel like a lot of us look to the wrong things to define people. I think that's where divesting is something that is incendiary when you talk about it, because it feels like, here's what it feels like from the outside. It feels like you're castigating a view across a race instead of condemning um actual like plot points and personality points and characteristics, instead of condemning those things as, okay, these are the things we stand against these high levels of misogyny, we stand against domestic violence, we stand against men who are philanderers, cheaters, these things. Instead of saying that, the idea of, well, in order to make our lives better, let's separate from Black men. That's the image that's pasted. And I feel like that's where it becomes something where it's not only offensive, it seems like something that is counterintuitive to what you're trying to do. Like it doesn't actually help you. You know what I'm saying? Because like technically there are assholes of every race. There's assholes of every ethnicity. So if your discerning factor of what makes you stay away from a man at that point isn't those things that we name that are terrible things, it's like, well, I'm just going to remove Black men from the list. It doesn't solve anything. You're still fucked as a person.
Well, Reggie, I'm sorry. I understand where you're coming from, right? I think as a Black woman, we're not necessarily trying to remove ourselves from Black men as a whole. We are trying to remove ourselves from those particular Black men who do those things, like you said, cheating, abusing, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing about it is there's such a large majority, and I know a lot of people may not agree with that, there's such a large majority of Black men who participate in those activities, okay? Those type of qualities, those type of characteristics, traits. So it's like for us, and I say this all the time in the rooms that I host, most women, Black women who are deciding to divest or whatever the case may be, have experienced those men not once, not two, but 3, 4, 5 times in their lives. We're in our 30s, we're in our 40s, and we're just like, hey, I've had enough. And again, for me personally, I've been abound, I've been a base. Okay. I've dated some of the bottom, I've dated some of the top. And I'm not going to say all of them were horrible, but the majority were trash, right? So we as Black women, we don't want to offend the Black man at all, because we know it's not all. But we feel like for ourselves as Black women, I know you say it sounds counterproductive, but it's all about preserving myself. Because if I still sit here, who knows? Okay, who knows when I'm going to reach one of them Black men who's not in the majority? Who knows? Time is not on our side. And there's a lot of women, okay, who quote unquote did the right thing and chose the right man, quote unquote, did everything they're supposed to be doing by the book, right? And they still get the short end of the stick. So it's just like, we got to come up with another solution here, and, you know, not care about what other people think, even if it is the Black man. We can't care about that, because at the end of the day, until the majority of Black men actually start to flip the script and actually start changing their behavior, it's gonna be like a, I don't know. It's just not gonna work. It's not feasible at all. And I don't know how to like really explain it any better than that, but it's just like, you know, we got to do something for ourselves as women. Women, just, you know, we've been oppressed, so just like men have been oppressed, right? But we have not only being Black, we have being a woman, and, you know, women's rights. We had to fight for Black rights, and it's like we get it so much on double time. You know what I'm saying? So that's why we have to be this strong Black woman. That's why we have to be this angry Black woman, because no one wants to listen to our voice when we tell them things. And not saying that your voice isn't being heard either, but I don't know. It just seems like we're double marginalized in a lot of areas. There's a lot of double standards, and there's a lot of nuances and a lot of convoluted stuff that's going on. And we want to just take stuff by the reins and change our own narrative for ourselves. Okay. And if that means offending somebody, then so be it. Like, that's just at the point that we are. And if Black men, not all, but majority, if they had known that, or if they had realized that, or taken a key to that before we got to this point, we may never have got to this point. But again, divesting is not just about going to the white man. I think, again, that's been, you know, highlighted for whatever reason, because it's a hot topic, it's a hot subject, it gets people going, right? But
do you believe that your definition, your personal, like your internalized definition of what divesting is, matches what the movement is?
So maybe parts of my personal definition, parts of it matches what the movement is. Because again, I'm just learning about the movement myself. But when I heard about the movement, I'm like, okay, this sounds like something that I can align with, because this is what I'm actually doing in my real life, you know? So for the most part, you know, I haven't really dug into it too deep, but just on the surface level, it rang true to me. It's like, wow, yeah, I am dating somebody outside my race. I have been doing that for the past year, and I have had a better experience. Even though it hasn't worked out, I have had a better experience overall, right? Yeah. So when I heard about divesting, I was like, wow, like, let me look more into this. Let me talk about this. Let me, you know, do a platform about it, because I feel like the more I get into it, the more it's probably going to, you know, align with the things that I believe in, my values. But right now, just as a surface level, I can't say that for sure, because I haven't really had a deep dive into the whole thing, right? So like last night, I learned like so much about it that, you know, I hadn't known before. And that's another reason why I held the room. So I want to know more. I want other people who know and let me know, so I can make sure that this is the right thing that I'm doing for myself to align with this type of movement.
Correct. So you're still kind of picking up on it yourself. That's why, like, I saw some of those rooms open, but I had to make sure I jumped out not to hear too much, because I still want a fresh perspective as far as like, there are certain questions that I want to be able to ask you on the fly, ask somebody who's being inquisitive about it, and not kind of rely on my own personal knowledge. Because here's the thing. I'm a person who, I'm not a believer in most movements, and there's a reason for that. I believe that most movements start off with a good idea, and they start off with good intentions. And the problem is extremism creeps into it, and it starts to separate itself from a lot of contingencies that I would consider to be reality. Like, I'll give you a good example. There's a huge difference between the phrase Black Lives Matter and the actual BLM organization. Huge difference. Yeah. And conceptually, the phrase is something that anybody who's not evil can wrap their head around. Easy. There's not an argument to be had. There's not anything too divisive. At the end of the day, it's the idea that Black people have rights and their lives should matter. That's it.
Right.
Now, when you start to break down things in the organization, whether it be, decisions that they've made, things that they've done as far as leadership and all of that, that's where all the bullshit comes in. That's where a lot of us, anybody who's an objective person, would be turned off by, because they're looking at that and they're like, this is not what we're fighting for. This is not a good representation of even what this phrase is.
Right.
Now, the danger of being a person who takes on the mantle of an organization or takes on the mantle of a phrase, for better or for worse, your ideals no longer just become your own. You become the face of something. So like before we had this conversation about divesting, can you imagine what it felt like reading threads of women who are talking about what they feel divesting is, reading these different websites that have their different, markers on what divesting means, and then being like, now I'm sitting in front of you and I'm like, holy shit, what is this conversation about to be like? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, it can be really confusing. I could definitely see where people can, not really see where the movement is coming from if it's all over the place. If there's people, all these different views, but they're all divestors. It's like, wait a minute, what's going on here? So yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think that's why last night in the room, there was a lot of people who were saying, this is not new. This was going on back in, such and such day and things of that nature. And then somebody rebuttal, oh, well, yeah, it was going on back then, but it wasn't the same type of movement. It was something else going on. It was, the reason behind it was because of this. So, I feel like with any movement, that's naturally going to happen with, people dying off and new people taking on, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just to be really expected. But as long as the general consensus is on board with the same idea at the core, I think anything else is just, I won't say fluff, but just like the trees and the branches, like the leaves and the branches. But as long as you have the root, the stump, the bark, the main part, then I think it'll sustain, and everybody else can, have their own leaf or branch, little ornament, decoration, whatever they want to do with it. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I'm looking at it.
All right, so I'm just going to ask you a few spitball questions back and forth just to concrete a few things out before we close things out. Now, when it comes to divesting, a lot of these questions are things you've already addressed, but I just kind of want to give them their own space to breathe, so it's a little bit easier for people to digest for the last part that we're going to reveal to everybody as far as the open conversation. Now, when it comes to divesting, in your words, do you believe that the movement, hashtag divest or divest Black woman, is the separation of the Black woman from the Black man or the Black home?
No, I don't believe that.
Okay. Now, the second question I have for you, as far as conceptually, the idea of choosing someone, choosing a mate based off of racial characteristics, is that something that you would be pro or against if that is like the line that's being drawn, where they're like, let's say I'm a female figure and I'm saying, hey, you're not, like, I'm G-checking you. You're not really one of us unless you feel these things. Now, if that line is drawn where it's like, okay, in order for you to identify as one of us, or in order for you to identify as a part of this group or this narrative, this is what we feel. How would you feel in response to that?
That's a good question. So, like, and I hate going to last night. Okay, so last night, right, the room I did, and there were people coming in talking about the collective, Black people as a whole.
Yeah.
And I felt like that conversation or that talking point was not relevant, as a divester, because that is not what we're focused on, you know what I'm saying? At least in my eyes, for the whole movement. So it's like, why are we talking about this? So I would say to somebody like, hey, if you're for the collective or for the Black community and generational wealth and things of that nature as like your primary concern to the forefront of your brain and your mind, that I'm going to say, you're not one of us. I'm going to say that. Yeah.
So you're one of those people who you don't believe that you're for the collective. You don't believe that you are for the idea of the, Black generational wealth, pushing that idea of the breaking generational curses and things of that nature? That's not something that's on the forefront of your mind.
So there's things that I've learned on Clubhouse as well, being pro-Black and for Black. So I know I'm definitely not pro-Black from the things that I've heard. I think that I am for Black because I am Black and I was raised around Black people. I have a Black mother, a Black father, and I participate in Black culture. So I'm gonna put it to you like this, just how with our previous conversation about the men, Black men in degrees, right? So just how they say, you know, it's important, but it's not on the top of my list when looking for a mate. That's how I feel about the collective as a Black community. It's important, but it's not at the top of my list when I'm looking for success and happiness in my life. London is at the top of my list, and that's never going to change. Myself is at the top of my list. I'm very, very selfish, and I'm not going to change that for anybody because it's always worked for me.
Okay. And, you know, as an individual, I don't think anybody has the right to tell you any different as far as like what works for you as a person. I just wanted to make sure I made those distinctive things. You know, everybody who is watching and or listening, go ahead and take the time to read up on Divesting for yourself. Read up on whether it be, you know, their blogs. If you search the hashtag on any social media, you're going to find a whole bunch of things to read, whole lot of different pages, a whole lot of different things. The one reason I asked you a lot of those questions, London, just being honest, your version is probably the biggest outlier version that I've heard of. From every other collective that I've read from, and even the conversations that I've heard, they all kind of center around the same points and they're all closer together. I feel like yours is more of an outlier than others because it seems like yours is more so you believe conceptually in a lot of the same things that I would believe, which is what you're looking for is just a good person. You're looking for a good, kind-hearted person with good morals who's going to treat you right.
Right.
And if that person so happens to be of the race Black or of, you know, whether it be the ethnicity be, you know, Nigerian, Jamaican, Haitian, whatever, then that is perfectly fine because you just want that. You just want to be happy.
Right.
Conceptually, what I've read from the movement was that the idea is to completely cut that section of people, that race out, and date solely on based upon other races and ethnicities and cultures and things of that nature, and to only face that way. And you know, that everybody has the right to have their own takeaways as far as what they read into things or how they feel or even how they're inspired by different things, because we all are inspired in different ways by different things. But I just thought that, you know, that was something very interesting that I should note at the end of this. Because one thing that I will say, talking to you is a very different experience than reading on Divesting. I may not agree with you, but you haven't said like, there's some really crazy, honestly disgusting, wild rhetoric that you'll get when you read up on that hashtag.
I believe it.
How do you, now my last question, I guess, before we break this thing on out, like, when you do come across those pages or come across those women who feel those ways, the more so standard way of divesting, you know, they'll use like statistics as far as, you know, incarceration rate, things like that, to kind of, instead of being as conversational points, they'll use them as jabs towards the Black community, or they'll use, because I've been in a Clubhouse room before with you where I'll hear you speak and then I'll hear other women who are claiming to agree with you, but the way that they'll speak, they'll use these different phrases and things that are honestly disgusting, things that I would never celebrate, but they'll use them as like a plot point to throw a jab at the Black man. How do you feel when those things happen? Like, does that affect you at all? Is there ever a moment where you're like, like,
you know, I'm really, unless it's something like a personal attack towards me, I can really care less as a whole, like about somebody's, you know, opinion or their thoughts about something, or how they try to use statistics in a certain type of way, anything like that. If it's not a personal attack against me, for the most part, I would just let it roll off my shoulder, let it roll off my back. I'm very indifferent to a lot of things, because again, I'm all about myself.
I've noticed. I have definitely noticed.
So I could care less. If it's not like one of my best, or my mother, my sister, one of my best friends, like, I'm good. Like, because I know that what they're saying or what they believe in, what they're doing is not really gonna affect me. So it's just like I've grown to have thick skin when it comes to a lot of things, and I might laugh, I might give a little sarcastic remark or whatever the case may be, but I'm not gonna like harbor or be like, oh my goodness, what are you doing? I'm not one of those people. So
Gotcha. I guess as my final comment going out, I'm one of those people who, even if it's something that I said and I truly believe and I wholeheartedly stand on it and it came out of my mouth, if the wrong person laughs, I'm automatically reevaluating what I just said. Like, let's say hypothetically, I'm standing in a group full of men and women, we're all cracking jokes or whatever, and I say something, and the one dude that I know this guy's fucking disgusting, right? He's a super misogynist. He's a terrible dude. If he laughs a little too hard, I'm rethinking what did I just say, because I don't like the idea that you agree with me so much. But that's just me.
I don't know if I ever had an instance where somebody that I thought was opposing to my views agreed with something that I said. It's always, I always find my tribe. I never am really around other people who disagree or would agree, because like you said, I'm an outlier, and I'm an outlier not just in this and most of the things that I believe in and do, right?
Yeah.
So it's really hard to find somebody to agree with that.
Well, I mean, this was definitely a great conversation. We're gonna pick up from this later. The idea is at the end of this, everybody take their time, look up Divesting, kind of read up on it, do what you need to do. We're actually going to host a clubhouse room together, just so that the people who do follow my podcast, they follow my Instagram and things of that nature. You guys can kind of talk about the subject, talk about your experiences as far as, and this is more so aimed at women, but of course, men, we should have both sides of the aisle engage in this dialogue. How have you felt as far as, because I know me, I'm 29 right now. So I'm getting to that age range of what would the Kevin Samuels fans call it, the danger zone, where at this point, you're kind of looking down the barrel of, okay, I should be serious about the rest of my life as far as finding a partner and things of that nature. How have your experiences been as far as the dating realm? Do you agree with what London has seen? Have you seen what she's seen? Have you had a completely opposing experience? Because that is possible too. Anybody is free to come talk, share, and all that good stuff. We'll both be hosting. Go ahead and follow us on Clubhouse. My Instagram name is the same as my Clubhouse name. I don't know about yours. I don't remember. Is it the same?
Yeah, it's because you have your name and you have the handle. My handle is the same. Well, not is it the same? It's the same, but it's not the same spelling as my Instagram. It's psilocybin, but I think it's with one N on Clubhouse.
Okay, so I'll make sure I add that graphic too for that. Yeah. So yeah, go ahead and follow her on Clubhouse. Follow me on Clubhouse. I'm going to make sure that I post leading up to that day. We haven't decided a date yet. That's why I'm not going to say it on the video, but you'll see it by the time this gets posted. There'll be a flyer and everything. Everything will be good. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you so much, London, for joining me. Is there anything else that you would like to say? Just as far as Divesting, do you have any final words or anything that you would like to share?
Yes, ladies, if you are listening, my Black queens, my Black sisters, Divesting is a blessing. Okay, that's all I got to say.
All right. Well, yet again, thank you guys for listening. This has been yet another great 1v1. I go by the name of Reggie Daes. Later, Daes.